Whether you're into unsolved mysteries, solved mysteries, or creating your own mysteries, Amazon Music's got millions of podcast episodes waiting. Just download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite podcasts ad-free, included with Prime.
With its 2 juicy beef patties and 3 slices of melted cheese topped with tangy Big Arch sauce, the Big Arch is what happens when you start making a McDonald's burger and never stop. The Big Arch, the most McDonald's burger yet, for a limited time.
Welcome to Good as Gold, the podcast where we share how Olympic dreams are actually human stories. I'm Sarah Hughes, Olympic champion in figure skating 2002 Salt Lake City, and your host for this journey behind the medal. Hey, how are you?
Hey,
Awesome. Can you hear me?
how's that?
Oh, perfect. You guys listen to music when you have your runs and practice, right?
Yeah, we do it even in the contest.
I guess you guys
Oh.
are good with technology.
My husband is more the audio video guy around here, but I can get by.
Or your Burton stuff.
Yeah, I'm still working with them. So it's been probably 25 years now
Oh, wow.
of working with them. And so we just have a great relationship. And I still do stuff when they need me to. I develop product and do stuff when they need me.
I love it. Oh, where are you?
I'm in my home in El Dorado Hills, California, just outside of Sacramento.
Is that where you spend most of your time?
I moved up here from Mammoth Lakes, California about 10 years ago. I met my husband and he grew up here locally. All of his family's here. This is where we spend most of our time. We make it to Tahoe here and there. We did travel a fair amount, but with the age that our daughter's at now, we don't travel as much.
I can relate. It's a totally different game.
Yeah, you end up, it's not really a vacation. You're just taking care of your kid in a different location.
I call them trips. It's not a vacation, it's a trip.
That's very true. It is a trip. And by the time you get home, sometimes it was a trip and you're like, man, that was a trip.
I want to talk a little bit about your snowboarding career and how you got into it. Obviously, your longevity is incredible. First, I have a question. Where do you keep your medals?
Nowhere fancy. I wish I had a spot to keep my medals. They're just in a safe right now. We just moved into a new spot and I'm hoping to come up with a cool idea to put them on display. They're pretty awesome to show and share with people. That's on the to-do list at the new house.
You bring them with you when you make appearances?
It depends on what I'm doing. I still work with the U.S. snowboard team from time to time. I'm on their trustee board. And when I do different appearances, I'll bring them. I still think getting through TSA security is always one of the funnier things when you're traveling with your medals.
I have not traveled them recently, but people are usually pretty interested.
Yeah, I actually shut down one entire lane of TSA one time because it was actually the Salt Lake one that you have. And it has like the flare at the top and then the round main section. And I'll take the ribbon and wrap it. So it's got this flare at the top and the round part. On the x-ray, it looks like a full-on grenade that you can't see through. And they shut down the entire Providence Airport TSA section. I was mortified, trying to explain to them what was happening. Supervisors did not think it was that funny.
Did you show it to them?
I had to show it to them, touch it. It was like this whole deal. It took probably like 20 minutes to clear it all up.
Did anyone else in line want to see it after, or were they all just like, get me to my gate?
No, they shut all those guys to a different place and shut it
okay.
down. But all the TSA agents who were checking it out, they were actually pretty stoked on it. So interesting to travel with. What about you? Do you have yours? Where do you keep yours?
I also have mine in the safe. I have not figured out a great display for it. We were moving and my Olympic dress is in a museum. But they asked for my medal and I was like, no, I want to keep it.
I think my snowboard from the Sochi games is in the Smithsonian and a bunch of different stuff was donated over the years. But yeah, I didn't give up any of my medals either.
Yeah, with my dress, I'm like, they're going to take better care of it right now than I am because temperature controlled and then people can enjoy it.
Yeah.
People don't ask, like, can I see your dress? Your
I think
routine
I
foods. Oh,
even,
can you
I think
bring your
I,
dress?
can you wear your dress? I think I even remember your dress. It was purple. Is that,
Yeah.
yeah, that look.
Do you get to pick out your outfits?
In every other contest except for the Olympics, Burton designed 4 different Olympic Games outfits, and we would have input on the design process years in advance. We definitely got to contribute. Now I think they have a different sponsor and it's just whatever shows up. But Burton always took a lot of pride in it and tried to make it kind of a statement, as you can remember through the years, all the different stuff.
Is the elite snowboarders a pretty consistent pack, or do you have a long pipeline? Like you're saying, like you get to design it a few years before. Now I'm thinking like, yeah, you've had a lot of longevity.
There's definitely a pretty consistent group. I saw that group change over 2 or 3 times throughout my career. I had an abnormally long career compared to most people as a snowboarder and any athlete. I think if you make it to one Olympics, it's a pretty incredible accomplishment. You know, there was like a small handful that would make 2, maybe 3, but it was really rare beyond that. You're looking at an 8 to 12 year career, which is really long, I'm sure, when you compare it to figure skating and different sports. The pipeline is a little different because it's kind of morphed from in 2002 and 1998, even it was half pipe specifically was the only discipline. But now there's big air, there's slope style, there's a lot of different aspects of the sport to be part of. So the actual pipeline for half pipe is pretty limited, and that aspect of the sport is in pretty fragile place right now, actually, as far as participation and progress, because there is a huge influx of slope style and big air, which as far as training goes and learning, it's a bit more straightforward than trying to find a 22-foot half pipe to train and the kind of aspects that go along with the sort of technique needed to ride half pipe. So it varies a little bit, and it's changed a lot over the last 25 years or so.
How did you get into snowboarding?
Well, I grew up in Mount Snow, Vermont. It was a small mountain town, and my dad was a ski bum. He had me on skis at 2, and I actually started snowboarding the first year was even allowed at my mountain. Snowboarding used to be illegal, and ski resorts didn't welcome snowboarders. I just saw this new sport on the mountain and I thought it looked so cool. I had been in a pretty competitive developmental ski racing program that my dad had me in. Ironically, I just didn't like it. I didn't like competing. I didn't like how intense it was. I didn't like that we had structured practice and all this stuff. I was just a kid, but I tried snowboarding when I was 7. And the time I was, I want to say 9, I had skipped enough ski racing practice that my dad let me stick with snowboarding. I never had any aspirations to compete. When I was going into high school, there was a local mountain academy, and basically you could go to school half day and snowboard half day. And I thought, wow, that is for me. So I talked to my parents about it, and they said, yes, you can come up with half the tuition, or talk to your grandpa and see if we can get the other half of the tuition. And as my parents owned the restaurant, I was bussing tables, started waiting tables, and I split the tuition and got to go to this school. But the school was focused around competing. So you do these local contests on the weekends. I thought, I'm getting to snowboard more. This is totally worth it. It was pretty cool looking back that my parents made me have skin in the game. I'm investing my own money, and it made me not waste the opportunity. And I started doing these local half pipe contests, and there was people much better than me, much more talented than me, but I just kind of found my niche. I loved it, and I just really committed to it. I was 14. It was 1998, and I had recorded the debut of snowboarding in the Olympics on a VHS tape. I watched it after school. I saw Ross Powers get the bronze. I saw Shannon Dunn get the bronze, but it wasn't anything flashy or special. I watched this snowboard competition and snowboarding become an Olympic sport. I knew right then and there that's what I wanted to do with my life. I saw it and I thought, yeah, this is what I want to do. And So I kind of just put my head down and started grinding towards that. I'm not a very big personality or in your face personality. I'm pretty reserved, but my longtime agent, Peter Carlisle, he still tells this story from when the X Games came to Mount Snow. I think I was 16. They let me in because I was a good story. I was just a local kid. I placed fourth in slopestyle. And Peter came to the restaurant. We were sitting in the back of my parents' restaurant. He was wondering if I wanted representation. He was asking me, what do you plan to do with your snowboarding future? And I guess I point blankly told him, well, I plan on winning the Olympics. That's pretty much the plan. And I have no recollection of that. And it doesn't sound like anything I would say, but it was what was in my heart. And it was the direction that I had set for myself. He laughs about it. 2 years later, we were standing there in Salt Lake City. I never really thought this could be my future. As soon as snowboarding developed a little bit more, I realized that I loved competing and snowboarding, and it was just going to be something I chased down.
Yeah, I was going to say snowboarding made its debut in 98. X Games wasn't around when you were little.
Mm-mm.
You weren't watching it on TV all the time growing up while you're snowboarding for half the day.
No, it was like illegal. It wasn't even anything. It wasn't even something you should aspire to. My dad told me I could be anything I wanted to be when I grew up. And I told him I wanted to be a pro snowboarder. And he's like, yeah, that doesn't exist. Like anything but that, But we kind of hit it at the time where, I think that the Salt Lake Games snowboarding really exploded onto mainstream America and the world. It was this huge explosion of the sport. We were kind of on the forefront of that. It was a privilege to be part of it.
I mean, you've watched the sport go through a transformation. I want to talk about Salt Lake for a second because I remember watching you compete. It was after opening ceremony. I actually went to Colorado Springs because the women's figure skating was very late in the games. I was watching you compete and you were the first American to win a gold medal for Team USA, the first American woman to ever win a gold medal in snowboarding. You were so chill about it all and having fun. You looked like you were having fun. And it made me feel a little bit less nervous and anxious, because skating's such a different type of like seeped in tradition. And there are a lot of rules. Figure skating is not illegal, but they have a lot of ideas about things that are illegal in figure skating. So I loved it to see that this is how the Salt Lake City Games started. Was awesome. And I think that's like a great note for Team USA because like you were young like I was, although 18 I seemed like much older. Because I was only 16.
Yeah, you were only 16 and I was only 18. Yeah, we were just babies. So crazy.
Just a baby. I remember you were doing an interview. You're like, I don't know. I think you had like a bacon sandwich or something for breakfast.
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah.
Did you have superstitions before you were competing?
Honestly, at that age, looking back in my career, I can see how I grew and changed and grew up. I never really aspired to it until a couple of years before the Olympics when I really committed to making that push. It wasn't like I was personally steeped in athleticism or in some of the tradition that perhaps you kind of experience as far as training goes. That didn't exist for me as a young person, and it didn't exist in our sport at the time either. We didn't look at ourselves as athletes. We didn't look at ourselves as Olympians. It just really wasn't part of our culture. Our sport has so much individuality and self-expression and culture in it. I look back and I can really say that it's easy being a rookie. Like those Olympics for me, I came in with, I'm just happy to be here sort of attitude. That's probably what you experienced while watching me because it was new, it was exciting, but it was just snowboarding for us. We didn't have this long history and expectations of what it should or should not be. So we were just kind of exploring that as we went. And I did have that kind of happy-go-lucky attitude at that age. But I also think that's just a product of being a rookie. Like I can look at my other Olympic experiences and I'm just like, oh, wow. Like, I didn't have the pressure and the expectation of being like a returning Olympic gold medalist. Like it's so interesting, all the kind of verbiage that gets put around you when you're defending your gold medal, and I'm like, I didn't know I was here to defend. I thought I was here to progress, so all my Olympics changed as I grew up as a person. But at the 2002 games, I really was just a kid. I was deferring from college for 1 year to prove to my parents that I could make it as a snowboarder. And I think in the stands, I remember after I won, I went and I found my dad. And the first thing I said to him is like, so funny. Like, this is just where my head was at. Cause I was literally just an 18-year-old kid. I said, does this mean I don't have to go to college? Like, that was my first word to my dad in the stands after I won the Olympics. It was like, is this enough? Did I prove to you that this is a legitimate thing? Because until then, snowboarding just wasn't a thing, so it was amazing. It was an absolute privilege to get to be part of all that progression, and also like a huge responsibility to represent my country, my sport to the world. We had no idea the stage we were getting put onto. And again, I'm sure you experienced this as well, but I think a lot of people forget about that games, that it was, it was 5 months post 9/11. And, especially being the first gold medal for the US, for the host country, like, it was the first time that our national anthem was played in the medals plaza for the US that games. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was a really powerful experience and moment in my career. I definitely, I went on to have, I went to 5 Olympics, and that one is, still up there as one of my favorite moments of my entire career.
And you had to be the favorite going in. I was looking at 2001, you were US Open champion, but then leading up to the Olympics, you were gold medal in X Games, gold medal at US Open in both half pipe and quarter pipe, overall US Grand Prix champion. So you had to be feeling confident.
Well, it was interesting. How our qualifiers work is we qualify extremely close to the games. And so we had 5 different qualification events, and they were going to send 3 women from the US on the team. You basically needed to podium in 2 of those events and have a bunch of other kind of scenarios play out to make the team. The first 2 events were in Mammoth, and my parents came out to watch. The first 2 Olympic qualifiers, I crashed in both finals, and I got 7th and 9th place. So now I had 5 chances. Now it was down to 3. And I was like, wow, I've got a podium twice in the next 3 events, which is hard. I realized that I had put too much pressure on myself, and what I was doing was not working. I needed to learn this one trick better that I was crashing on. So I spent all Christmas break, all New Year's break working on this one trick, the McTwist. And I finally started landing it. And I remember when I started landing it, it was in a snowstorm, which is not a good time to ride half pipe if you're wondering, when it's slow and snowy and you can't see anything. And it was a snowstorm in Mammoth. And I was chucking McTwists, which is like a front flip 540. And the rest of the team was like in the lodge having hot cocoa. I just knew it was what I needed to figure out. And I started landing it. And so I went into the next Olympic qualifier, which was in Mount Bachelor, Oregon. And I just thought, okay, it's one contest at a time. It's one run at a time. I just have to land this one trick. And all of a sudden I won that next Olympic qualifier. So I had a 7th and 9th, and then I had a 1st. And I was like, okay, so you're telling me there's a chance. I've got 2 more contests, and I need 1 more podium, especially with a 1st place result. And so I just kind of stuck to that plan and won the next 2 Olympic qualifiers, which gave me the Grand Prix champ. And all of a sudden I was the #1 overall Olympic qualifier. I was like, okay, I went from last to 1st, and it's January 15th, and the Olympics were February 10th. So I'm hitting this ramp up right at the right time. And in between when they name the Olympic team and when the Olympics are, we have the X Games. And so up until now, I've only been competing against people from the US for the most part. And I knew when we went to the X Games, I was going to be competing against everybody. I was going to be competing against my biggest competition, which was Nicola Tost, Natasha Zurich, all of these women from all these different countries, Dorian Vidal. And I just thought, okay, like, let's see how I stack up. This was the run that I needed, and I'm going to see how it stacks up against the rest of the competition. I won the X Games by 12 points, and it was only a 50-point scale or something. So it was, that's a big win margin. And it was just like at that moment, I realized it was a real reality that I had a chance. I was like, I could really win this thing if I land. And so I just took what was working, like that happy-go-lucky attitude. I let go of all the pressure. I let go of all of that stuff, and I just focused on my snowboarding. And I just focused on that one trick I needed to land. And I qualified first for finals. And I went into the finals, and I believe it was a 6-person final, and they run in reverse order for how you qualified. So I qualified first. So I was going to drop in last, and they take 2 runs, and your best run counts. So, five people go in the finals. I drop in last for my first run, and I don't know if at that point I was in second, or if I got bumped to second during the second run of finals. But by the time my final run came, I was the last competitor to go in the whole contest. I knew I was in second place at that time. So I was guaranteed an Olympic medal by the time I dropped into my final run, which again, just let go of all that pressure for me, knowing that, like, okay, worst case, I get a silver. And I just thought, well, I've got one chance to go for it, and I'm going to put everything I have on the line and see if I can win this thing. I went down, and I easily landed the best run of my life. And it wasn't easy to land, but it was easily the best performance I've ever had. And I just remember being in the finish area, and I looked at my coach and I shrugged my shoulders, because we knew the plan. We knew what it was going to take. We knew what it was going to take to win. And I looked at him, and I just thought, are you kidding me? Like, I just did it. Like, that's exactly what needed to happen. And we just waited for the score to come in, and that was it. It was, 17,000 people screaming and going crazy. It was just a really amazing experience.
I was there cheering you on. I mean, so was America. We were all so excited because the snowboarding was just such a fun, I don't say it was a fun addition because it was part of the program in 98, but here on U.S. soil, people really wanting to come together at that time. I remember the snowboarders also had, and I don't know if this is right or not, but like a reputation of being like counterculture.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We didn't fit, we weren't your traditional Olympians. We were your everyday kids, and I think, I don't know, I would be curious to know your kind of take on it, on this aspect of it. But I've always kind of compared snowboarding, like some other Olympic sports, everyday person doesn't get a chance to do it. Like, everybody doesn't get to go bobsledding on the weekends, but a lot of people go skiing and snowboarding. And I think there was something that was happening at that Olympics where it was like everybody saw themselves in snowboarding. It was very relatable. They were everyday people, and they snowboarded on the weekends, or they skied on the weekends. I just thought it was something that people could relate to. And it's new and it's exciting. I think figure skating lends itself to that, I think, and just the excitement of it when you're looking at the kind of acrobatic nature of it. It's just such an art form, which I think, not everybody would say that, but that's what half pipe riding is. Everything is dependent on everything else. And if one trick, if one bobble, if one edge catch, like one mistake in that 30-second run can ruin your entire score. So it's really unique because everything has to work together perfectly for it to work.
I mean, we're both judge sports, and we can talk about that.
Is that how figure skating works? Is it a planned routine that then you kind of add all the scores up before you execute it, and then it gets deductions based off of how you do it? Is that how it works?
So it's actually a different system now than when I competed. At the Salt Lake City Games was actually a catalyst for changing the whole scoring system, which you actually competed under 2 scoring systems. The answer to your question is it doesn't only work off of deductions because you can also get bonuses.
Okay.
So you have a base value. Like set up your program with a base value. When I was competing, it was on a 6.0 scale. The audience and everyone in the arena would see, there were 9 judges, and everyone would see the country the judges were from and what they gave the skaters. So it was pretty easy to understand, like 5.6, 5.7, 4.9. That would be a not great score.
Yeah.
In a league competition, or 5.9, 6.0 is the best you can do. Also, a lot of people would root for certain judges or see scores, and you could see ordinals right away. Now the system is, from what I've learned in my limited time studying snowboarding.
That's pretty good. You know your stuff, actually. I'm impressed.
There are some similarities in that the new judging system in skating that they changed to tried to take into effect the difficulty of elements that people are doing, which seemed to be what snowboarding is doing, is that because your sport's also progressing quickly, is that the judges are trying to take into account the level of difficulty and the way that they're executed into the final score.
Yeah, exactly. There are kind of a lot of similarities in it. It's changed a lot over the years for us as well. In Salt Lake, it was not the same format that the contests are run at now. It was interesting because the qualifications in Salt Lake, if you did not finish between 4 and 16, the top 3 from the first run of qualifications would go straight to finals. 4 through 16 would get a second run. If you finished outside of 16, say you fell your first run and totally blew up, you wouldn't even get another shot. You wouldn't even get another chance at it. And so it really limited progression. I believe in 1998, the finals were combined runs. So if you have 2 runs that are combined, it's going to limit progression because no one wants to take any risk. They're like, well, should I do 2 medium hard runs that I know I can land and get a decent combined score? Or should I go for broke and get 1 huge progressive run that really pushes my limits? And so it changed from 98 to 2002. And even now it's all changed basically to overall impression, but it all takes into account amplitude, which you're seeing how high someone in half pipe, how high someone goes above the lip of the pipe. Technical difficulty, which we have 4 different ways we can rotate. You want a variety of all that. And you have overall impression, which is kind of taking the whole scope of the run. And execution, I believe, is the other main criteria point. And it's changing. And I don't believe, and I'm sure most every judge sport is like this, like it's so hard to strike that balance between progression, allowing room for creativity and growth without like stifling it to get perfect judging. So we kind of sacrifice perfect judging for progression, where it's like, it's not going to be perfect, but we would rather it not be perfect if the sport can keep growing, is kind of the snowboarder's attitude. Like we would rather there be gray and maybe sometimes the judges not get it right, just because it means the sport can still grow. Because anytime, I think for me personally, that is why I stayed in the sport for so long, because I always was growing and learning and changing and challenged. And the second that I wasn't growing and being challenged, that was actually when I decided to retire, because I actually realized I had hit my own personal ceiling. I had hit my own potential. I had done all of the tricks that I could possibly get my body to do. And I knew I wasn't going to grow anymore. And as soon as I knew that was the case, even though I probably still could have been competitive if I went to a 6 Olympics, I probably still I would have had a good shot at making the team, and I would have been able to mix it up in the top couple people. But for me, it was never about an external motivator. It was never about what other people were doing or what kind of thing I could achieve. What I learned at that first Olympics was if I focused on my snowboarding, that was my key to success. And if I continued to grow, that was my key to enjoyment. And those were the things that you can really lose in the world of competitive sports. You can lose that motivation. You can lose your identity. You can lose yourself. You can lose all of these things. And you end up burned out, you end up injured, you end up all these things. And so I had to kind of figure out for me what my expectations were and how I wanted to play the game. And it led to a really long, fulfilling career because every day I was really, really challenged to grow.
When I was looking at like 5 Olympic Games, which is incredible, staying injury free, staying at the top of your sport, and it's like 3 medals, but the other 2 were 4th place. So it wasn't like you were totally, off the map. It was so close. One of the things that struck me, this is not about scoring, and this actually might be a testament to the popularity of snowboarding here in the US, is the different times that the events were held, like the finals. So like Salt Lake, it was at noon. Then in Torino for 2006, it was like 2 p.m. local time, which actually is like prime time for the US.
Yeah.
Vancouver is like 8 p.m. And now
8
everyone
p.m.
wants to go watch snowboarding or like the half pipe. But then like
Sochi was like 9:30.
Did I not write down Sochi? You know what? 10 p.m. You were right.
Yeah.
Qualifying is 2 p.m. The finals is at 10 p.m. Oh, yeah, because I was like, maybe that affected you.
It
but
did.
then in Pyeongchang, it did. Yeah, because then I'm like 11 p.m. I was like, how are you? But it's like such a different atmosphere of how you're competing. It's light out. If it's 11 p.m., then it's all artificial light.
Yeah, the light doesn't affect you as much as the conditions of the half pipe. And the energy levels. When you're an older athlete, it's more difficult to maintain that kind of excellence. Sochi was super difficult for me because my first run was at noon. I was actually in the first heat, and the second heat was at 2. I should look up the temperature, but I want to say the temperature was about 40 degrees that day. So if you've ever been to a ski resort, you've seen what it's like on a spring day when it's 40 degrees. The snow is just slushy and full of water content. It's melting and it's very bumpy. And so you can imagine that kind of warm snow. I qualified first in the finals in Sochi. My last round was at 10 p.m. I had been, in my boots for 10 hours, 2 rounds of competition where you're supposed to be at your best. And the half pipe conditions that day, though, were so deteriorated by the time that wet snow had frozen into ruts. And one of the walls that was in the sun in the half pipe had melted and lost the vert. And the vert is what keeps us in. So if the vert melts, it becomes a launch ramp onto the deck. If it's fully vertical, it keeps you in and you land where you should. So that becomes really high stakes game when you're throwing different tricks and traveling at really high speeds. So for me and my strengths as a snowboarder, I was known for carrying a lot of speed, carrying a lot of amplitude, doing really large rotation tricks. And it just hamstrung me that night. It was so difficult. But that's judged competition sports and an outdoor winter sport that we do. It's part of the game, as challenging and sometimes disappointing as it is.
In Sochi, I remember you were, as it was promoted in the media, I was like, you were the favorite. You had 95, which was the highest score under that new scoring system at the Olympics and the qualifying. And then the final, no one got that score.
Yeah.
But you still had your qualifying score was the highest for all the women, but you didn't do your best. You still ended up bronze. Did that make you think I want to continue to do this for another 4 years?
Yeah, that night was super challenging. That for the reasons I just stated, It was really challenging. And when I actually went into practice for the finals that night, you get like 5 runs of warm up, and so I'm trying to ride that bumpy pipe, and I'm quickly realizing my plan isn't going to work. What I did a couple hours ago in qualifiers, there's no way I could get it done with these conditions, So talked to my coach and we tried to figure out, okay, what can we do here? And I I moved. My biggest trick at the time there was a frontside 1080, which is like 3 full rotations. And I hit that one wall that you can do it on. I have 3 different places in my run. And it's really not ideal during an Olympic final to completely change your run. But that was the challenge I was presented with. And I knew that was the only way forward. So I said, okay, I'm going to change my whole run. My coaches and I, like, all my Olympic experience prior to that, all my competition experience prior to that, we trained for that. We know that's a possibility. And so, any time before that competition where we ran into terrible conditions, I would say, all right, I got to change everything now. And hey, what an opportunity this is to practice this. If this is what happens at the Olympics, like, I need to practice this now. So it would be 2-3 years before an Olympic Games, and we'd run into some snowstorm, some terrible thing. And I'd say, hey, you know what? Like, what a great opportunity this is to practice. So I went into it, with that attitude. And I think as an athlete, things can either be an opportunity or a threat. And it's imperative that you look at them as an opportunity, because as soon as you start operating from a place of fear, we're at our worst when we're afraid, And so that opportunity, that whole looking at things as an opportunity really served me well throughout my career. And those 5 runs in warm up for that final, I moved my 1080 3 different times and I crashed on every one of them. And so now I am going into the Olympic final. I have not landed a run since that 95 score I got around noon. And it probably started around 8:30 or 9 p.m. And I'm just like, wow. And I went and I saw my sports psych at the bottom, and I'm looking at like all these Team USA people, and all their eyes were just huge. Like, no one knows what to say to me. They're like, wow, the wheels are falling off for Kelly. What do we say? And I tell my sports psych, I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, I think I need to go have like a good cry right now. Like, I have to get all this frustration and emotion out, and then I'll keep going. And I literally, this is like embarrassing. I literally walked around the stands with my sports psych, and I ugly cried for about 30 seconds. I sobbed, and I got it all out. And I looked at her and I said, hey, what an opportunity. And she said, what an opportunity to land a run in the final where you haven't landed a run all night. So I went back up. I took the rope tow up. I saw my coach, and he looks at me and he says, hey, what an opportunity. And I say, what an opportunity. I was thinking the same thing. And so I went and I dropped in for my first run, and I landed my 1080, first time all night, but I was so unprepared for landing that I got G'd out on the next wall and hit the deck on a cab 7, bounced 22 feet to the flat, and like reverse tacoed in the flat bottom. And boom, my first run in finals was over. And I was just thinking, wow. But that scenario of falling first run in the finals was the scenario that I planned for more often than a terrible practice. I never had a terrible practice. Like, that's so rare. But a first run fall, that's a realistic scenario that happens to me in snowboarding. So I went back to the top, and I knew this was by chance, and I had one shot, and I was dropping last. And, it's actually so funny, those, you get tagged in photos on Instagram, and there was one photo that I got tagged in, and it's me standing at the top of the pipe, ready to drop in for that second run, last competitor of the whole contest. And I have my hands on my knees, and I'm looking down at my feet. I look like I'm going to throw up. And it's like the weight of the world was on me, and I dropped in and I landed everything in my run. It was not the best snowboarding that I've ever done. I had the potential to win that event. I had the potential, I think I had the potential to win 3 of the Olympics that I was in, and that was one of them. And I should have been the favorite in 3 of them. And I remember I got down to the bottom, and it was like, it took them like, I want to say 6 minutes to deliberate my score to put me into 3rd place. It was excruciating. And if you were to actually like start the stopwatch, it was like I just barely got bumped into that third position. But it's so funny. Everybody will ask you what medal is your favorite, what one means the most. And while I can say my favorite experience was Salt Lake, it was so special for so many reasons, and I'll cherish that forever. Like I can easily say that that medal from Russia is like one of like my crowning achievements, because it's like you value things based off of what they cost you. And that one, no one knows what I went through. No one knows how difficult it was. No one knows that I was crying behind the stadium before the contest. And so I was so proud of that performance. The Olympic culture is just so, it's so cutthroat. You know, if you don't win, it's like, thanks for coming. Everybody just disregards you. And I think that's sports culture to some degree, is like next man up if you don't win, you know. But that performance for me was just one of my favorite moments in my career. And I cherish that because it cost me so much, you know.
Did you see your sports psychologist after?
I did. We celebrated, and yeah, it was really awesome. But I'm sorry, I didn't quite fully answer your question.
But that's okay. What an opportunity. Yes.
Yeah. But to answer your question is, did I decide to continue to go after that because I could have won? I actually just knew I had more in the tank. I remember being in the mixed zone media corral, and I've got this American flag over me, and I'm just so ecstatic for putting down a run that night. And every reporter I saw was like, are you finally going to hang it up? Are you finally going to retire? Are you finally done? And I'm like, I just won a bronze medal. Like, let me just celebrate before I'm thinking about what I'm going to do with my life, you know? And, I just got that question everywhere I went. And I asked myself, you know, was I done growing and progressing? And at that point, the answer was no. I was like, I still have things to learn, and I still can get better. And then I also kind of looked around, because it was really at a turning point where all of my peers were retiring. A lot of them already had, and it was just going to be a full on changing of the guard. Like I was double the age of the competitors, you know, heading into the Korea Games. And I looked at those women though, and realized that I had something that they needed. And it's hard when you're a peer to have like influence, because there's like a tension of competition where you can't really receive from somebody that you're afraid of or you're threatened by. And so that peer influence, while we inspired each other and pushed each other, we never really received from each other. But when I looked at these young women that I was going to be competing against heading into 2018, it was like, I was like a poster on their wall, you know, and they looked up to me so much. And I had all this experience, and I had all of this knowledge about competition and figuring out how to figure out your identity while you're in the spotlight, all of this stuff. And I just knew that they needed me, and I knew I had something to contribute. And so for me, it wasn't so much, hey, I should go back and try and win a gold medal again. It was like, I can still get better at snowboarding, and I can help people around me.
Does the snowboarding team compete together throughout the year too?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's only so many half pipes, you know, and so everyone's training at the same location every single day. Everybody's traveling to all different corners or the same corners of the world. You end up knowing the people really well.
You find that the snowboarders coming up today on this, I'll call it the Olympic track, for it is, or more polished in how they're presenting themselves, or they're thinking about, oh, this is my brand, and not as much, you know, this is just a fun thing to do. I mean, I remember when I was at the opening ceremony, when a bunch of the athletes are milling around, just hanging out, and there were like 2 or 3 guys together, and they told me that they were figure skaters. And they're like, what sport do you do? And I was like, figure skating. And they were like, oh, and they turned out to be snowboarders, you know, thinking like, I'm in the situation with like a bunch of Olympic athletes, but it didn't feel like they considered themselves as part of the group.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people, I mean, like I was saying, when I started snowboarding, the Olympics didn't even exist for snowboarders. And kids are starting snowboarding now to become an Olympian. So it's a really different thing. And then the world we live in is just social media, marketing focused, where everybody is their own brand and, everybody's promoting something. I don't know. There's a lot going on besides snowboarding for people. And I personally, maybe I'm just getting old, but I don't necessarily think it's the best thing for the sport. I don't necessarily think it's the best thing for snowboarding. But because I think it adds pressure and it takes away the joy. That motivation thing, when you're doing it to prove to people how great you are or how valuable you are to some company or how much influence you have or how many followers you have or whatever it is, I just think you can lose touch with why you do it. And it doesn't become fun. It becomes something that you have to do, not something that you want to do. And based off of my experience, you can do it that way, but it doesn't last long and it's not very fun. So I think, that's something that I hope snowboarding maintains their culture and the fact that it's fun and it's not just about the Olympics, because I don't see that being a good thing for the sport.
Was the adjustment like for you into becoming I call it a non-competitive snowboarder? Or would you just always consider yourself a competitive snowboarder?
Yeah, I was like that. If you were to look up in the dictionary, what's a competitive snowboarder look like, it'd be me. That's what I did. I loved competing. And then when I realized I wanted to retire in 2019, I've been with Burton Snowboards for 25 years now. And I remember I went to Jake and Donna, who were the founders of the company. And I said, hey, yeah, that thing you guys pay me to do, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be done. I want to retire. I've loved getting to be here and do this, but I'm not going to fit that mold anymore, and fill that need in this company anymore. And they said, retirement has such a negative connotation. And for us, that just doesn't register for us. Snowboarding is not just about competition. It's about so much more. And they said, we don't want you to go anywhere. We actually want to celebrate. At that point, I had been with them for 20 years. And so we actually designed like a special snowboard and did a limited release to celebrate my retirement. And X Games had invited me back that year. And it was the first time in 20 years that I had declined. They send you a letter, please accept or decline. And I was like, nah, I'm done. And they called me and they're like, what do you mean you're not coming? I was like, I'm retiring. I don't want to go. And they said, no, come and we're actually do a recap of your career, actually. And so it was pretty special because I got to go to my 20th X Games and they let me drop in before the contest started. And they did this whole segment and played this whole kind of archive footage of 20 years of competing. I got to just thank everyone who's ever poured into me and believed in me. And it was really special. Not very many athletes get to decide that they want to retire. People are pushed out. People's bodies don't work. There's injuries. Different scenarios happen. And it was just a real honor and a privilege to be able to make that decision. It was something, that's how I always competed. I always felt like I was the one calling the shots. I wasn't doing tricks because other people were doing it. I wasn't trying to prove to people how great I was. I wasn't trying to win Olympic medals and looking at for external motivation. I was doing it internally. And I didn't want my career to end by some external circumstance saying it's over. And so I knew I had hit my own personal ceiling and I thought, this is it. I want to retire gracefully and on my own terms, essentially. Both Burton and the X Games really just celebrated that and met me in that place. It was really special, like one of the top 3 moments of my career that night at the X Games. And since then, I've gotten to still be involved with Burton. I develop product. I've commentated at the Olympics. I do a lot of different things that are much less stressful than what I used to do. The stakes are much lower, and I'm grateful to still be involved, but not be consumed. I didn't realize, perhaps you can relate to this, I didn't realize until I retired how all-consuming it was and what it required of me. It was normal. It was my normal. It was all I knew since I was a 14-year-old kid was this Olympic grind. I had no idea that it was occupying all of my brain and all of my heart space. And so it was pretty humbling to come out of that. I didn't miss what I did. I don't miss what my life used to be like at all. I still snowboard a ton and I love it for fun. But I love having my brain space back, and I love having my heart space back. And even over the last 3 years, I guess 4 years now, I met my husband, got married. We have a little baby girl. I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for the season I spent snowboarding, but I'm so grateful that I didn't spend too much time snowboarding to miss out on this part of life, because the way that I approached competitions and being a snowboarder, there was no room for anything else the way I did it.
I love how fulfilled you seem and grateful.
Yeah, I really am. I'm really content. I love what I got to do. It's just a privilege to represent my country. It was a privilege to be on the world stage, inspire people, push the boundaries of what I could do, be part of such a great sport, such a great company like Burton. And I'm just really thankful for it. And I love being a mom. I love the life that I have now. On snowboarding, you realize quickly that your influence goes away as soon as you're done competing, as soon as you're not the one standing on top of the box anymore. At the end of the day, your influence kind of goes away, and records are there, but records are meant to be broken. And I loved having the influence with the women and the next generation of young snowboarders, but figuring out investing in people was a way that I knew I would have lasting influence. And as a mother, that is really what I'm realizing is there's my lasting influence is in having a family and seeing my kids grow up.
I love that. I was looking at some of the things you said. One of them was that if your dream only involves you, it's too small of a dream. I don't want to get done snowboarding and just have a good string of competition results, medals, accomplishments. I want to look at a culture that's better because I was a part of it. You've really lived that. But that's what you're living now. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's why I'm still with Burton, is because I have it's such a relational, business relationship where we really value each other beyond performance. There's so much more depth to it, which I'm just kind of still reaping, having approached my competitive career in such a way. I still get to have these relationships because I think so many people get done performing and they only invested in themselves, and all of a sudden when it's over and they're gone. And I'm so grateful that I still get to be part of things. And it was because I took that approach of investing in other people and investing in the sport.
This has been amazing. I like to ask a few questions at the end. It's called Torch or Tin. If something is awesome, it's torch. And if something is not, then it's tin.
Tin, torch or
tin. Torch is good. Triple corks and women's half pipe.
Yeah. Tin.
Do you think it takes away from the viewing pleasure or the integrity of the sport?
Yeah. The integrity of the sport is this. They're just not there yet. And you should keep working on other things before you kind of go for the spin to win game.
The 100-point judging system.
Yeah, torch. I like a bigger judging scale. I think I love more range. Range is really important.
Mixed team snowboard cross as an Olympic event.
I have some dear friends who do that, but I think it's not something you see on like an everyday snowboard slope. So for me, nah.
Competing in snow.
Yeah, torched best. It doesn't hurt as bad when you fall.
The reg stand should have a different name.
Regular? Oh, no. 10. I think regular is great.
Well, the other stance is called goofy,
yeah.
which to a non-snowboarder is like regular or goofy.
Goofy,
like
yeah.
one sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, I think sounds like a lot of fun. I see. Well, I always say there's always like one goofy in the midst of everybody who's just regular. So there's always one troublemaker who's goofy. I am regular, as you can tell.
How is it? Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you. I loved getting to talk with you today.
Yeah, this was so much fun.
Make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and join us on this journey. And remember, behind every gold medal is a story worth telling.
The average cost of a DUI in Virginia is $11,352.47. Drinking and driving costs more than your drinks. Learn more at whatsthedamage.org. Brought to you by Virginia DMV.